Hi, I'm Ian Rees, and you're listening to Scottish Shindig with Andy Phillip on Radio GH.
The Scottish Shindig, the best in Scottish dance music and song.
Well, hello and welcome to the Scottish Shindig. It's Andy standing in for you. Sit back, relax for the next hour of great music and song with the Scottish Shindig. Very warm welcome to each and every one of you. Great to see so many tuned in. I hope you've had a great weekend and that you're ready for an hour's relaxation or a bit of a jig about the kitchen or the living room or your back garden, however the weather's suiting you wherever you are. We'll get things started off with the Lochmore Ceilidh Band from an album Looking for a Partner. Here you are, Get Your Partner, and On the Floor for the Gay Gordons. very warm welcome. That was to get us going with the Gay Gordons and the Wallachmore Cayley Band. And hello to everyone that's tuned in from Shetland to Southampton, from Mukti to Missouri. It's great to see you all. And we'll keep on going. The heat in here, it's been clammy here today, but not so brilliantly sunshine, but very warm. I'm going to call it the Shindig sauna. All this equipment round about that generates a lot of heat. Anyway, enough of that. Pride at Erin Waltz, this time coming from Gary Sutherland and the Cayley Band from the album Fight About the Fireside. So take your partners, a Pride at Erin Waltz. Some beautiful arrangements and beautiful playing from Gary Sutherland Cayley Band from an album called Fight About the Fireside, and that was of course a selection of lovely Irish waltzes for a Pride of Erin waltz. Well, we'll lift the tempo slightly this time, and from Stephen Carker and his Scottish dance band and the album Fine Mix, we'll have a Eva 3-step. Well, some great bounce there and great playing from Stephen Carker and the Scottish Dance Band from the album Fine Mix. That was, of course, an Eva 3-step. Well, time for a wee song, and from no better than the Alexander Brothers. I'll play this one for Andy Mack over in Blue Water, Ontario. Andy's got a great show, The Sounds of Scotland, and you'll hear that on Radio GH at 12 o'clock on a Monday and repeated throughout the week. And if you're listening, Andy, thanks very much for the shout over the weekend there. That was very kind of you. Anyway, for Andy Mack and for everybody else tuned in, here is the Alexander Brothers with The Glorious North.
Sing, O dear old Scotland, its bonny hills and glens, its mountains and its rivers, the wee bit button bends. But I sing about the country, free spated ever inside, the tunes and places ken fu weel all o'er the country wide. There's Keith and Aberlour, Craigellachie and Banff, the famous names o' Huntly, Highdufton and Macduff. There's Lossiemouth and Elgin and Rothes on the Spey. It's names like these I'll treasure when I'm getting old and grey. There's songs about the Gardie at the back o' Benahee, the bonny lass o' Fyvie and the bonny River Dee, the heather hills and woodlands down by the River Don. I sing these names in chorus high and still a journey on. There's Banchory and Aboyne, Balmoral and Braemar, the famous tune o' Ballater near lofty Lochnagar. Then o'er the hills to Cushney, Strathdon and Craigievar, then down through Waffer's bonny vale to Cluny and Midmar. Their songs of scenic splendour frae Wick to Inverness, the Howamens and Kintore likewise a waterless. But the famous tunes of Buchan that lie down by the sea, St. Combs, the Broch and Peter Heap will I be dear to me. Then round by Mormon Braes I'd like to settle down, by Strichen and by Ellen, then o'er to Meldrum Toon, through Bonny Inverurie, round by the Loch of Skene, to wander in by Hazelhead to Bonny Aberdeen. There's Keith and Aberlour, Craigellachie and Banff, the famous names o' Huntly, Highdufton and Macduff. There's Lossiemouth and Elgin and Rothes on the Spey. It's names like these I'll treasure when I'm getting old and grey.
Well, the unmistakable sound of Tom and Jack, the Alexander Brothers, from an album called The Very Best Of, Volume 3, and that was The Glorious North, and hope you all enjoyed that one. Well, we'll pick up the tempo just slightly, and you can form into sets on the floor for a Virginia reel. Get ready to clap your hands, stamp your feet, and dozy-do. Here's Gavin Piper from his album Flat Out with the Virginia reel. great fun set from Gavin Piper, brilliantly played, and that was from his album Flat Out, and he was going quite flat out there. That was a great set for the Virginia Reel. Well, back to couples dancing. This is the easy one from School Days, Heel Toe Military Two-Step, and Simon Howitt and his Scottish Dance Band from the album The 2020 Sound are going to play it for us. Well, a great track from Simon Howie and his Scottish Dance Band from the album The 2020 Sound. That was, of course, a military two-step. And hello to Robin Thompson down in New Zealand. I hope the winter's not been too fierce to you down there. And to Andy, great to see you're tuned in. Andy, give me a wee message on email and we'll maybe catch up. Well, time to slow it down a wee bit. This time we're going to have a lovely track from Brian Gare and Violet Tulloch from an album Kebister Head. And this is a lament for Lowry Ida Lee. Well, a gorgeous Slow Air, the lament for Laura Ida Lee from Brian Gare and Violet Tulloch from a lovely track. And that was from the album Kebisterhead. I played that for Elizabeth White over in Rhode Island. I know Elizabeth enjoys beautifully played violin, fiddle music, and that falls into that category 110%. Well, we'll lift the tempo slightly. This time we'll go to Bill Black from an album A Real Cracker, and here's the band with some great jigs. What a sound, and great tempo there from Bill Black and his band from the album A Real Cracker, and those were cracking jigs from Bill Black and the boys in the band. Well, Anne Smith has just messaged to say that both Andy Ross and John the Prof Matheson have birthdays today. I wouldn't read out the rest because I want to keep on their good side. But if you're tuned in, Andy and John, many happy returns from myself and from everybody tuned in. And for you, here's a wee tune from Janet Graham and her Scottish dance band, and it's a polka from her album The Cumbernauld Collection. That was Janet Graham and a Scottish dance band with Let's Have a Ceilidh polka from her album The Cumbernauld Collection. And on that, of course, second box was Derek Hamilton, on drums Gordon Young, on piano Ian Wilson, and of course on lead accordion Janet Graham herself. And if you're tuned in, Janet and Walter, hope you're doing well. And I just see a message from Grant McDougall there. He also wishes to wish Ian Thompson of the Crying Ceilidh Band a happy birthday for today. And from myself and everybody tuned in, Ian, that extends from us too. Hope you're having a great day. Well, the next track, it's almost halfway through the programme, and we usually like to have a wee trip abroad. And I mentioned last week I played a track from Eric Bouvel, and I said that Eric had been instrumental in getting a lot of youngsters onto a great recording, a homage to André Verschuren, who's a French virtuoso accordion and player and composer. Well, I'm going to play one of the tracks from that album. All the people on it were under the age of 25, and many were under the age of 16 that were playing. The talent is incredible. And none more so than Blythe Shand. Blythe recorded a track on this one, as did her two brothers, but I'm going to play Blythe's one tonight, and it's a track from the album Hommage à André Verschuren, and the track is Samba de Sifflet, and I hope you enjoy it. Play especially for Shirley. Fantastic playing there from Blythe Shand, and that was from an album Hommage à André Verschuren, and a track called Samba de Sifflet, and brilliantly played. Great stuff. That is a fantastic album. If you enjoy continental music, that is one to get. It's fantastic. As I say, very many players on it, all very young, and Inver and Cleland are both on that one as well. Well, back to the traditional, and from John Douglas and his Scottish Dance Band with a track from an album Dance Favourites. Here they are with Shifting Bobbins. Well, a great track from John Douglas and his Scottish dance band from the album I've Lost the Place. That's not the name of the title, that's me. Dance Favourites was the title of the album, and the dance, of course, and the tune and therein, Shifting Bobbins. Well, time to head to Leonard Brown and a track from his album A Toast to Scotland, and I see Marge has tuned in, so I'll play this one for you, Marge. It is, of course, Leonard paying tribute to Andrew Rankin with some of Andrew's best known jigs. A great set of Andrew Rankin jigs from Leonard Brown and the guys in the band from his album A Toast to Scotland, and great tunes, timeless, absolutely timeless, beautifully played. Well, from one exponent to another, Paddy Neary, sadly no longer with us, but a great player, and we had some waltzes earlier on for Pride of Erin, and here's some more Irish waltzes, this time for a sing-along, played by Paddy Neary from his album The High Levels of Paddy Neary, and what an album it is. And I'm going to play this one for Jim and Elaine over in the Strathlee Guest House and Spa in Kilmarnock. I know that Jim enjoys some of the tunes in this set, so if you're tuned in, Jim, I expect to hear about you singing along. And everyone else, join in with Paddy Neary with some Irish waltzes. gorgeous sound of Paddy Neary from his album The High Levels of Paddy Neary, and that was a lovely set of Irish waltzes, starting with the Green Glens of Antrim. Well, time to pick the pace up a wee bit. Well, we heard from one of the youngsters of the family earlier on. It's time to hear from Feather. From the album Cayley Round the Steeple, here's a great track from Gordon Shand and his Scottish Dance Band with A Circassian Circle. Super track from a great band, and it was Gordon Shand and his Scottish Dance Band from an album Cayley Round the Steeple, and it was of course A Circassian Circle. Well, time for another wee song. This time we come back to Ayrshire, and it's from a singer down this way, a great singer Linton McMillan, with his all-star band behind him from an album Heart of Scotland. Here's Linton to sing Catch Me If You Can.
I'm a Pogeen from Tullagwargeen. I have money and acres of land. I'm looking for a honey with a bit of money. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man. I love the Cayleys, the stackle barley. I love the waltzes, those jigs and the reels, and I like swinging when Big Tom's singing. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man. And I'm off to Listranvar at the ending of the year. I'm off for a bit of crack, wee, the women and the beer. I'm a full shifty, for a man of 50. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man. I have a brother, he's in the Gardaí. I've an uncle, he's up there in the Doll. He's quite a charmer, he's a mighty farmer. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man. But to conclude now and finish my story, if there's a young girl who's looking for a man, take the bus through Barna down to Listranvarna. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man. And I'm off to Listranvar at the ending of the year. I'm off for a bit of crack, wee, the woman and the beer. I'm a full shifty for a man of 50. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man. And I'm off to Listranvar at the ending of the year. I'm off for a bit of crack, the women and the beer. I'm a full shifty for a man of 50. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man. I'm a full shifty for a man of 50. Catch me if you can, my name is Dan, sure I'm your man.
Great track from Linton Macmillan, from an album called The Heart of Scotland. That was Catch Me If You Can, my name is Dan. I hope you're all singing along. Well, time to go back to an album. I played a track from a few weeks ago from Tim Eadie. The album's called Little Bird, and this is a great lively track. It's two tracks in one, two songs in one track, and it's Celtic Thunder and Kent to Kintail, and I'm sure that Tim will tell you all about it at the start.
Celtic Thunder into Kent to Kintail. Take one. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, what a track, what a player. Tim Eadie from an album called Little Bird. That was Celtic Thunder and Kent to Kintail. What a sound. And if you get the chance to hear him playing live, then I suggest you do that. Well, the next track I've inserted, Grant McDougall had sent in a request, bear with me while I check another screen here, to wish Billy Stewart and Peter Coulter a happy birthday for yesterday with best wishes from Ian and Grant. So, Billy, if you're tuned in, Billy Stewart and Peter Coulter, happy birthday from Grant and Ian. From myself and everybody else tuned in, and I requested a track of Ewan Galloway playing, any tune I think it was. So I've picked Ewan playing Douglas Gray's Two-Step for Billy Stewart. Well, unbelievably, that brings us down to the end of the programme, just about. Thank you very much for your company for the last hour, and I hope you've enjoyed the mixture of music. All that remains for me to say is thanks once again, and thank you for your kind comments. I'm glad you're enjoying the music, and I'll leave you in the very capable hands of Tom Orr and the band from his album Tomorrow's World with a selection of Bobby McLeod's reels. So until the next time, all the best, take care of yourselves, and cheerio from me. All the best, folks. Till the next time, take care. Thanks once again.